my name's Craig Merriweather, and I'm the host of the Mastermind Show. Are you tired of emotional pain? Are your relationships challenging and often painful? Are you attracting the same kinds of people and problems into your life? Do you feel that you just can't do anything right and are stuck in self-loathing and hatred? Most of us would like more peace and happiness in our lives, but often we are being blocked by past hurts and pain. But you cannot be in a peaceful state if you're holding on to resentment and anger about things that have happened in the past. It is incredibly disempowering to make others responsible for your lack of happiness. You will also remain stuck and struggling if you continue to blame yourself. My guest today is Colin Tipping, one of the most popular teachers of our time. Colin is the creator of what is now recognized as the most powerful leading-edge technology for personal and spiritual growth today, radical forgiveness. He's also the best-selling author of the books Radical Forgiveness, Radical Self-Forgiveness, and Expanding into Love. In addition to working with individuals, families, and groups, he also takes a specialized form of radical forgiveness technology into corporations and other organizations as a way of resolving and preventing conflict, raising morale, and increasing productivity. The main characteristic of his work is a practical spirituality that is simple, honest, straightforward, and unpretentious. He has a knack for making spiritual issues simple and practical. He believes that spirituality is useless if it cannot be used in a practical way in our everyday lives. So, Colin, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. That was a long introduction. I hardly need to say anything.
Well, we touched on a lot of points at the beginning, and I just want to just start off right away that says, a lot of us, we often carry the burden of the trauma or maybe the humiliations we felt in our life or the way maybe our lives seem to be broken. We carry the burden ourselves, blaming ourselves for all the things that are wrong in our lives. And a lot of people say in various books and workshops and things, they say self-forgiveness is the key, but it doesn't really seem to work, or people really don't even know how to do it. And you contend that there's another way of doing it. And I wonder if you can explain radical self-forgiveness.
Okay. It is a burden. There's no question about it, that when we've got all these stories that of being victimized and also being a perpetrator, it is a burden to carry around with us. And conventional forgiveness hasn't really done it for us. It is universally thought to be, very difficult to do, and especially self-forgiveness. It's just almost impossible, most people will say, with conventional forgiveness. So when my wife and I were working back in the 90s with people who had cancer, and they are known to have real forgiveness problems, we had to come up with a form of forgiveness and self-forgiveness that was different and that was quick and it was easy and that anybody could do it. So, very briefly, Craig, the basic concept behind radical forgiveness and radical self-forgiveness is that when we become open to the idea that there is a spiritual reality that's operating underneath the human experience that we're having when having incarnated into this earth plane, so to speak, that this spiritual reality, if we were to be privy to the logic of it, we would see that there is divine purpose in everything that happens, and that there is a plan, if you like, a divine plan that we are all following for our own individual lives, plus the plan for the whole of humanity, that asks us in a way to, or suggests to us in a way that we have these experiences, which we call tragic experiences or bad experiences, in order for our soul to grow and learn through them. So that in that sense, what we eventually come down to is that nothing wrong is happening because it's all divinely guided and purposeful in the spiritual sense. Right. So that's the basic idea. Of course, it normally takes me a whole book to explain that.
All right.
But if your listeners have already got a bit of a handle on it, I'm sure they'll get the essence of it. So the basic idea is that things don't so much happen to us, but they happen for us. And if there is no victims, then there can be no perpetrators either. So there's even the things that we do ourselves for which we feel guilt and shame, that if we open up to the possibility that there is divine purpose in it, it gives us some relief from that burden that we talked about earlier on. And the thing about this that we've discovered over the years is that it's such a crazy idea that the mind can't get a hold of it, really. So all that it asks us to do is to be willing to be open to this as even a remote possibility, that there is perfection in everything, that there is there is a divine plan behind it, and it's all nothing wrong is happening. So just that little bit of willingness seems to be enough for, I think, what happens is that our spiritual intelligence hears that. When we make an affirmation or when we do a worksheet, because the whole thing does depend on these tools that we've created, like worksheets and audio processors as well, but mainly the worksheets, that when we open to that possibility, our spiritual intelligence says yes. Our mind, of course, continues to say no, it's nonsense, absolute nonsense. But the proof of the pudding for me is that it seems to work. So belief isn't necessary. I would say I don't even believe it. If it didn't work, I wouldn't believe it. And I only believe it because I see it operating and I see people's lives changing in a very, very dramatic way. Not only in that they feel better, but the actual situation causing the upset in the first place seems to dissolve as well. So energetically, something extremely powerful and mysterious is happening when we do it. So,
seems like often people can get addicted to the pity party, the self-pity and the blame. Is it helpful with even that kind of deep self-loathing?
Well, that's all part of the experience that we came in to have. We've come into this life experience by choice, in my opinion, and that we've come in to have the experiences that we have a hand in creating, along with other people in our lives, in order to give us the experiences that we came to have. Having a pity party, in a sense, is all part of that game. But once we wake up, and really this is what my book is all about, Expanding into Love, is waking up to these truths and then shifting our lives in a way that we can expand into the love that is inherent in all of us. And expanding into the love that really is the nature of the universe. The universe or God or spirit is nothing but love. So as we open to these ideas and these truths, then that's what we do. We expand our consciousness to include the love of the universe or love of God, however you want to put it, instead of choosing to continually suffer and be in the pity party. But we first of all have to wake up and wake up and realize that what we've been doing here is exactly what we needed to do, and that we've come to a place of where we've probably done all that we need to do in the way of creating separation. So now we can get on with our life in a different way by making a difference in the world, being of service to other people, and just living what I call radical living lifestyle, which is a conscious lifestyle, knowing the game we're playing, understanding how to play it, and also to go back and clean up what we have created in the past in the way of stories that gave us the experiences that we wanted. So there is an element in which we are house cleaning, so to speak, once we have awakened. And that's what, again, this is what that book helps us to do, is to go back and clean house and then expand our consciousness.
Well, it seems like your work really goes against the grain of what we believe here in America and maybe other cultures of the world. If you look at our movies, our TV shows, sports even, especially after 9/11 and Bin Laden, you'll see that the standard practice of dealing with traumatic events is not forgiveness but revenge. And you take down the Twin Towers and we will be avenged. Forgiveness is seen as weakness.
Yes. That's the conventional view of forgiveness. But things are changing, Greg. The consciousness overall is shifting, and there is a conversation these days about forgiveness, whereas probably a few years ago there would never have been. I always joke and I say, my next book is called Radical Revenge.
That'd be a big seller. Probably the movie would be great
probably,
too.
Yeah, I'd probably sell far more books if I called it that, and gave lots of tips. But people's consciousness is shifting in this direction towards forgiveness, because I think people know that even when they do feel revenge, and of course, with radical forgiveness and self-forgiveness, you have to start from where you are. And that's usually in that place of wanting revenge or feeling guilt and feeling shame, and then proceed through a series of steps which take you to what I call the reframe, which is being able to see that's not the answer, that forgiveness and love is the only answer to all of these things. But it's a process, and we have to allow ourselves to go through the process, and part of it is feeling vengeful or angry or guilty or ashamed or whatever it is. We have to feel those feelings first and then move through them to collapse the story and then reframe it in this new term. But I do believe that there is a consciousness that is shifting in that direction, where people know that that's the real truth, that revenge doesn't bring you peace at all, that only love is real. But we need the tools to help us do it, and that's where radical forgiveness comes in. Because I think you said it in the introduction, that if spirituality is to be any help to anybody, it has to be practical. It has to be something that you can use on a daily basis that really works and shifts your consciousness bit by bit by bit. And that's what we're doing.
Well, there's a couple sentences from the introduction in your new book, Expanding the Love, I want to read, because it kind of goes into your this thought that we're maybe creating these experiences so that we can learn something from them and grow. And this is what you say. You say, the fact is, there are times when the path of love is not always what our soul's growth demands. In the same way that we first need to know darkness in order to experience light, it is necessary for us all to become exposed to the pain that is unlike love in order to learn what love is and to fully experience love. So we need to feel the pain of the disappointment and the anger and the frustrations in order to understand what love really is, what joy really is.
Yeah. It goes back to what I was saying a little earlier there, that we must first that we've come into this life experience. In my opinion, I make these assumptions. I don't say beliefs, but I make these assumptions that we've come in as souls, take on a body with the purpose, with the goal, objective of experiencing a certain amount of separation, so that we can really connect at the feeling level with what oneness really is. And that's why we need a body, in order to be able to connect with it at the emotional level, because an emotion is a thought attached to a feeling, and without a body we don't have feelings. But so we create lots of circumstances during the first half of our life that give us the opportunity to experience everything opposite to love, in order for us to really get what love really is. So that's the essence of it, I guess, is behind that whole section there. Mm. It's not an easy idea to deal with at the rational level, so that the mind often resists those things, those ideas. But our spiritual intelligence seems to say, to resonate with that, and it seems to work. So that's the idea.
Now, these techniques of radical forgiveness, these aren't techniques to change other people.
I always say that you can't change anybody else's life at all. It's none of your business. That you can really only do the forgiveness work on yourself. You can't do it for people, and you certainly can't change other people. That's one of the myths that we work with all the time, especially in relationship counseling. A lot of people say, I'm all right, it's the other person who needs to change. And or women will often say, if I love him enough, he'll change and be what I want.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I'm glad you brought that up, really.
well, it's relationship seems to play a big part in whether we're happy or not. If we're not happy, or if the relationships aren't going right, we're not going to be happy. And or if maybe we've had a divorce, or we've broken up with a long-term relationship, or are having problems with parents, how do you let go of that anger maybe that from a long-term relationship that didn't go well at the end?
Right. Well, forgiveness, the radical forgiveness takes care of that. But as we talk about in the book, Expanding into Love, what we come to realize is that the notion that relationships are just in order for us to be happy is really another myth. Relationships are for healing. We come into relationship with people, whether it's a very short-term relationship, it could be a matter of hours, or a lifetime. But we use those relationships to heal and grow, and sometimes that can produce an awful lot of discomfort and sometimes a lot of pain. But that's the purpose of the relationship, is to give us the opportunities to learn and grow at the spiritual level. Now, once we awaken, and the awakening usually happens about halfway through our life. Some people a bit later, some people earlier, but generally speaking about halfway. Once we wake up to what's going on and to realize that our spiritual journey is all about experiencing these painful experiences in order to expand into love, then it becomes easier because we get to understand what it's all about and how to handle it. Then we use the tools of the radical forgiveness to help us to navigate through these healing experiences within the relationship. And as a consequence of that, the relationship deepens, or it goes away, one of the two. But once we understand the real purpose of relationship, then we work with it, and it becomes a lot easier because we know what's going on, instead of buying into this myth that relationships is all about being happy, and that's the end of it, and if we're not happy, then we're failing. It's actually the other way round. If we're just happy and we're not healing each other or bringing some challenges to each other, then the relationship is not really serving its spiritual purpose. That's totally different to the way we normally think about relationships.
There's something else that you say that I think is just brilliant, and it's that the people who show up in your life show up as a reflection of yourself, or as a mirror of yourself.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the basics of the relationships, is that we pull people into our lives so that they will mirror back to us the parts of ourselves that we haven't forgiven. And so that brings us back to the self-forgiveness.
Right.
That once we realize, though, that's happening, the way I've expressed that is, if you spot it, you got it. So if you see it in somebody else that you don't like, it's part of your own self-hatred that you haven't looked at yet, that belongs in the shadow, as Carl Jung called it. So it's an opportunity for you to love that part of yourself, but you don't have to figure it out. This is another thing about radical forgiveness. The big trap is people think that they have to figure it all out. What is happening? What is being projected and mirrored back to me? You don't have to. You just have to recognize that it is a mirror. And you just say, thank you. That's all you have to do. Thank you for mirroring that for me. That must be a part of me that I haven't loved and that I've denied and repressed and projected onto that person. Thank you very much for showing it to me, whatever it is, and it doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah. Well, and life issues can be the same. So if you're, say, struggling with a health issue, or maybe struggling with a financial issue, those are also mirroring parts of you?
Absolutely. And you see, we either project our self-hatred out onto other people, out to the world, or we project it onto ourselves, especially onto our body. So a lot of times, our own self-hatred will show up as a disease. But just to bring a little light to the idea of the self-forgiveness and why it's so difficult, as we said at the beginning, The reason it's so difficult is that we are making an appeal to to ourselves. So we're at the one, we're the forgiver and the forgiven all in the same person. So it's very difficult to say, I forgive myself, because there's a big part of you that says no, and that's the inner judge. The inner judge will always say no, the critical parent that you have within you. See, we're not just one single self, we're a whole community of selves. And the ones that come into play when you ask for forgiveness of yourself is the inner judge, and it will say, no, you're a bad person. So that's why it's so difficult. So the way around that, what we do with radical self-forgiveness, we say, let's leave the ego part of us alone, and we'll go straight to our higher self and ask our higher self for forgiveness. And we use the worksheet to do that. And you get instant forgiveness from that part of you, because that part of you knows that everything that happens is perfect and there's nothing to forgive anyway. So it will always say yes, because it loves you.
Right. Well,
so
a lot of our religious traditions are based on the premise that there needs to be some outside source forgiving you, and you have to ask from towards the outside of yourself for forgiveness, not inward.
Right, but your higher self is you.
Yeah.
So with radical forgiveness, we are going inside to ask our own higher self. So anybody, whether you're religious or not, even an atheist, can ask his higher self, and that's the part of you that is spirit. And I don't think there's anybody in the world that doesn't think that we have a spiritual dimension to ourselves. But of course, at the same time, if you're a religious person, when you ask your higher self for forgiveness, your higher self is connected in to what I would call the universal self, or God, and so it is a form of prayer. So you can make it whatever you want to make it. But when we're talking self-forgiveness, then you're looking at yourself, your higher self, when you ask for forgiveness under the radical self-forgiveness method. With conventional forgiveness, you're trying to ask your ego. Guess why it doesn't work?
But if I take the premise that I need to learn something from this event, it still doesn't take away the fact that other person did something to me that hurt, or it caused me pain or trauma. And it's still often hard to let go of that.
Well, exactly. That's why we need these tools, and they help us to fake it till we make it. Because, as I said earlier on, our mind will always say that's nonsense. We can't really get our mind around this whole thing because it's just too mysterious for us to work it through logically. But the only test is, does it work? And 9 times out of 10, as far as I'm concerned, it works all the time. If we just are open to that possibility. Now, we have to distinguish between spiritual reality and human reality. If somebody has done something terrible to you at the human level, it is something terrible. It has, and that person is accountable for what they do in the human world. So we're always accountable and responsible for breaking rules or doing things that we shouldn't do. We remain accountable at the human level. But at the same time, we have to understand that there's a spiritual reason why that whole scenario is happening. And there's a spiritual reason why that particular person has come into your life. It's no accident that that person is there doing what they're doing, because it's all part of the overall divine plan. And it could easily have been planned prior to incarnation, what we call a soul contract. So the thing is, we have to resist the temptation to make this deeply mysterious or deeply intellectual, because the intellect cannot handle what this is all about. So we only have to say, all right, I'm willing to go there. Let me do this worksheet and see if it works. And if it does, fine. If it doesn't, that's fine too. So we don't want to. You don't have to make it too difficult for people.
Well, why do people seem to keep attracting the same people into their lives, or the same money situations into their lives over and over again? Are we just not learning the lesson?
Right. I mean, they're not getting it. They're not getting it. That there's some shift that's what they're being shown is that they have a blockage in that area in their consciousness that needs to be shifted. I hesitate to use the word healed, but it needs to be shifted if that's what they need. If they've done enough of that in their life to have learned the lesson, get that block out of the way. Everybody seems to, if you ask people, do you have a pattern of doing this or that? They'll say, oh, yeah, that's true. Well, once you recognize the pattern, then usually it starts to go away because you do the forgiveness work around whoever was the last person to do that to you or to withhold money from you or whatever it is. You do the forgiveness work and it tends to go away, and then the money will flow. See, money is only energy, and if you don't have it in your life, you're blocking it. You're blocking the energy.
So the book Expanding into Love isn't just for romantic relationships. It's actually a book that you can deal with your neighbors, your coworkers, family members, and things like that as well, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's a book. It's a book that will really open your consciousness to a wholly different way of looking at the world and being in the world. So, yeah. But relationships is a big part of it because that is a big part of our lives, and it's one of the ways in which we learn how to expand into the love that we are.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there some sort of change we can do right now that I can go out, to work today, or when I come home and deal with my family? Some little tip you could give us that we could just maybe start turning things around if we're having troubles?
There is a tool that's really quick and easy. If once you've gotten the idea, I mean, there are 4 steps that you can go through that really help you to shift your consciousness when a situation occurs that's unwanted or difficult to do, difficult to go through. But without the background knowledge, it would seem a little silly. Let me tell you what it is. So when something happens to you, you have an accident or somebody insults you or rejects you or whatever, you say, well, look what I've created. That's the first step. This is a 4-step process. Look what I've created. That was where you start to take responsibility for having set this situation up for yourself. Second step, I notice my feelings and my judgments, but I love myself anyway. So that's the human dimension. The third step, which is the radical forgiveness step, is I'm willing to see the perfection in this situation. And you're going to say this through clenched teeth, probably. and then the final step is I choose peace. And that's it. If you could remember those 4 steps, having at least read the book or looked at the website or understood basically the idea that we do create our lives moment by moment for our soul's journey, then this will work for you. So let me go over it one more time real quick. First step, look what I've created. And you have to resist not making yourself wrong for that, by the way. It just is. Look what I've created. And then second step, I notice my judgments and my feelings, but I love myself anyway for feeling them. Okay, so that really acknowledges your humanness. And then the third step, I'm willing to see the perfection in this situation. Fourth step, I choose peace.
So it's really taking self-responsibility for the things that happen in your life, whether other people, quote unquote, do it to you or not. It's you need to take responsibility for it.
Absolutely. And that takes you out of being a victim.
Well, each one of your books is a weekend-long workshop, and so it's hard to get all of it into a half-hour interview. So I appreciate your time. If you want more information, you can go to colintipping.com. That's Colin with 1 L, Tipping with 2 P's. You can also find him on Facebook, on Twitter. If you go to themastermindshow.com/Colin, which is COLIN. You can find links to the website, to Facebook, to Twitter, find out more about his books and things like that. So go to the website. You can find out when he's doing workshops coming up. He travels. You go around the world, actually, doing a workshop, just not in the United States. So look to see if he's coming to a place near you or travel to where he's going to be, because they're fabulous workshops.
Yeah.
And Colin, thank you
There's
so much.
there's a lot of just to mention it, Craig. There's a lot of free stuff on the website too. If they go to the membership side, there's a free membership site, and you get loads of free stuff, worksheets, and all that kind of stuff. So.
And actually, what I was looking through, it's not just books. Of course, there's audiobooks and some DVDs and things, but there's so much fun stuff there to go through. There's a board game, and there's all sorts of things. So it's actually a really fun website to go to and get tons of information, as well as find out more about books, Expanding into Love and Radical Self-Forgiveness, and all the other stuff that Colin's doing. And definitely his Facebook page is a fun one. There's lots of great information that comes through his postings. That I've liked his page a while ago, and it's fun to get his stuff all the time. So anyway, Colin, thank you so much for taking some time with us today. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Bye, Colin.
Bye-bye.